welcome to this United States Senate Forum here at the Livery Stable in Madison, Indiana. I'm Rick Roos. It's Lisa Singh Shaddy. We are We the People on WKM News. The Madison Courier kind of left that out, but then they leave a lot of facts out of their stories. But it did make front page, so you guys got top billing. We are here to help select the most conservative senator from the next conservative senator from the state of Indiana. From the choice from Eric Holcomb, Marlin Stutzman, and Todd Young. We're thankful you're here. Now we're going to send video links of this event to all 92 county chairs of the Republican Party. We're also going to send it to all 50-plus Tea Party organizations in the state of Indiana. Yeah, we're still here. And we're also going to send it to C-SPAN. And I've met Brian Lamb, he's a Purdue guy, so that's a good thing. Now the procedure that we're going to follow, we're going to show video clips of Obama, Hillary, the Baron Hill, and Senator Joe Donnelly. You will each be addressed as your desired title, Senator Holcomb, Senator Stutzman, or Senator Young. You are going to debate the person that said whatever the video clip said. We'll be using an alternating alphabetical order announced by Lisa. You will have 1 minute to answer each question. That's enforced by me saying, time. Your answers will be directed toward the President, Secretary of State, the Baron, or Senator Donnelly, not each other. The candidates will abide by a variant of Reagan's rule. Thou shall not talk against another candidate in this forum. Now, please hold your applause until the end of the forum. We will now have a 3-minute opening statement by the candidates. First up is Eric Holcomb.
Well, it is good to be here, and Rick and Lisa, I hope you also send it to NPR and MSNBC just for kicks.
Okay.
Great to be back in downtown Madison. Usually I found myself, I've probably been downtown Madison 100,000 times, but always when I went to Hanover College, and always at Hinkle's, and always after midnight, so I'll just confess that right out front. I've been very fortunate since graduating from Hanover College to have served virtually my entire adult life, our state or our country. First in the United States Navy, and which took me abroad to Lisbon, Portugal, of all places, in Europe, at a little NATO underground war headquarters. And then when I came back to Indiana, one thing led to another, and I ended up working for and with former Governor Mitch Daniels on almost a very special decade. The campaign first, and then both terms, where we took an $800 million deficit and converted it into a $2 billion surplus, where we lowered our personal property taxes to some of the lowest in the country, where we were building bridges and roads through a creative and new way of thinking and doing business, where we ushered in a AAA credit rating, and the list goes on and on and on. I could talk for 3 hours, not 3 minutes, on everything we were able to achieve. Also served as your state Republican Party chairman, and we focused during those years. I tried to serve as a kind of seamless transition between the outgoing Governor Daniels and the incoming Governor Mike Pence, and we focused on building our Republican Party from the ground up, electing new mayors all over the state of Indiana, supermajorities in the State House, and the list goes on and on as well. And that is exactly why I am running for the United States Senate, because I remember very vividly the mood of the electorate during those early years. People said, you can't do it, the problems are too big, it's going to always be the same thing, and there was talk, and we never built the new bridge in Madison, Indiana, or the two in Jeffersonville in Clark County. We never got around to doing that. We could dream it, but we could never do it. And we proved that there was a better way, and that's called the Indiana way. And I don't think we can afford the next 6 years on the federal front to reflect what the last 6 years look like. So I'm getting out and about the state, and I'm building the team through rooms like this, We the People. That is the solution to the problem. And then I'm building that plan, listening and sharing what my thoughts are on how to address those kind of top 10 threats that we as Americans face together. And so with your help, If you share that goal, I'd love to have you on the team, and together we'll build a safer, stronger, and freer America.
Marlon Stutzman.
Well, thank you, Rick and Lisa. Appreciate you helping to organize this, along with the other organizations involved. And it's great to be back in Madison in Jefferson County, out on the campaign trail for the Senate seat again. I want to introduce my wife, Christy, who is here with me this afternoon. Christy has been traveling with me around the state as much as she can. Our boys, Peyton and Preston, were going to be here with us as well, but Peyton got sick. I think it was actually his excuse for staying home and watching his idol, Peyton Manning, play football. But we somehow bought it, and we let him stay at Grandpa and Grandma's to let him recover. But anyway, it's great to be here and excited to participate in this discussion. I tell you, we face such tremendous challenges in our country right now, and I don't need to tell all of you those challenges, but I know that what I see in Washington, D.C. is that unfortunately we have too many on the left, including our president, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, who think that the answers are found in Washington, D.C., and they're not. They are found in places like Indiana, in Oklahoma, and Florida, and other parts all across this country where the great American dream still is alive, but people are afraid that we're losing it and that it's leaving because Washington becomes more powerful. I grew up on a farm in LaGrange County, which is on the far northern end of the state, and expected to be a farmer throughout my career. My dad and my granddad were both farmers, and I expected to do the same, and never expected to be in politics. And I was also a trucker. We started a trucking company. So my brothers tease me that I've gone from being a farmer to a truck driver to a politician. I'm really not moving up a food chain here in a positive direction. But, I learned quickly in a small business, especially in farming and trucking, that government doesn't always work with you. They actually work against you a lot of the times. And it was it was in 2001. Christy and I had our firstborn, Peyton. He was 3 weeks old, and 9/11 happened. And being a new dad and being a small business owner and a family person and a person that just loved our country, I felt that I needed to do something, and I didn't know what that was. So we started to get involved with our local Republican Party and decided to run for a state representative seat, completely green to politics, but knew that I wanted to do something and participate in the discussion. And so we got involved, ran for a state representative seat, won, and served in the Indiana State House for 6 years under Governor Mitch Daniels, who did just a remarkable job as governor getting our state turned around, and then also in the state Senate, but quickly realized that it was Washington, D.C. that continued to mandate to our state. Randy knows this in the state legislature, that we are continually forced and blackmailed into passing legislation because the federal government wants it, and they dangle dollars over our heads to pass legislation. So we have a lot of work to do in Washington, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Todd Young.
Well, I'm Todd Young. I used to be your congressman for 2 years and then they changed the lines on me. I was told I had to run for United States Senate to represent you again. Seriously, I got to know many of you in the course of that campaign against Barron Hill, and it really warmed my heart to see so many Americans back in that election cycle stand up, speak out, get involved in politics. So many conservatives at a time when our country really needed it, and we need you again. I'm a blessed person. I'm a U.S. Marine that aspires to go to the U.S. Senate so that I can kick down doors in the U.S. Senate where they're not open. I come from a fairly middle-class, normal Hoosier background. I had great parents. It's popular these days for candidates for public office to compete over who grew up in a smaller log cabin. I come from a really good family, and I understand the importance of family. Had a chance to go to the U.S. Naval Academy and jumped at that opportunity out of public schools. Upon graduating from Annapolis, I was a Marine Corps intelligence officer, and I was trained in counterterrorism. I learned about leadership through all of those exercises, and that is translated into my service in the U.S. House of Representatives over the last few years. I'm running for United States Senate because Jenny and I, we have 4 kids, and we're really concerned about their future. And what we want for them is what I think everyone wants for their children, their grandchildren, for the next generation. You want a quality education that turn into good paying jobs that ultimately leads to a meaningful career in places around Indiana. I'm running for United States Senate because I understand what I think most of you understand. I learned it at the Naval Academy and in the Marine Corps. The world is a very dangerous place, and it only gets more dangerous if America turns her back on the world, economically, diplomatically, and yes, militarily. And we need a United States Senator who understands that. And I'm also running for United States Senate for people like my parents. My dad's a small businessman. My mom's a registered nurse. They're not particularly political people. In fact, I don't know that they'd ever been to a political speech or a chicken dinner until I ran for office. Some of you got to know them in the course of that campaign against Hill in 2010. They're tired after 7 years of a show business president of all talk and no action. They're conservative people. They're not really political people. They want results. And it's going to take leadership, conservative leadership, to get results. Well, I'm running on my record, not on past life activities. Since being in Congress, I've been responsible for cutting $5 trillion from our spending and cutting our deficit in half at a time when Barack Obama was pushing for more spending and higher taxes. I authored and got passed out of the House the signature regulatory reform bill that will require every major regulation from Obama to come before U.S. Congress. I'm running on my record. I thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with all of you today.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now this portion is going to be a little bit more entertaining. Rick has created all of this. If you get a little bit upset at some of these videos, don't be surprised. I hope you do. That's the whole point of using these videos as the jumping board for our questions. So our first question is going to be off of a video clip from Obama, and it's regarding executive orders.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball.
I don't know about you, but I think a lot of us had reactions when we heard him say that. So first off, we'll have Senator Stutzman. The question regarding this video clip is, what would you say to Obama about how you will fight to restore Congress to its proper constitutional role, which is as a check on the executive and judicial abuses of our government?
Well, I would, first of all say this, that during the President's State of the Union a couple of years ago, when he made a similar remark to this, it was astonishing to see half of the Democrat Party stand and applaud him. These are members of Congress who are standing and applauding the President's comments, basically saying, I'm not going to give Congress any authority, I'm going to take your authority away. And what I would say to the President is that you're wrong. That as a senator, and what I've done as a congressman, is to fight the president, and the best way that we can do that is through the power of the purse. Congress is weaker today than it has been in years. The executive branch is much more powerful. The judicial branch is much more powerful. What Congress has is the ability to control the power of the purse. And when we disagree with the president, just like recently on the president's actions on further gun control legislation, I filed a bill that has tremendous support in the House of Representatives that would defund any of the president's actions to further control gun policy in this country. And I believe that that's the power that we have as Congress, that's the power that we have in the Senate, and as a senator and as a sitting member so far, I fight the president on those grounds that we control the money in the House and in the Senate, and we stop the president by controlling the money. Thank you.
Thank you much. Senator Young, same question. What would you say to Obama about how you will fight to restore Congress to its proper constitutional role, which is as a check on the executive and judicial abuses of our government?
I'd say, Mr. President, I have taken an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States twice. First as a United States Marine, now as a member of Congress. Mr. President, the Constitution contains Article 1, where it says that all lawmaking powers reside in Congress, not with the executive branch. That is Article 2. Your job is to faithfully execute the laws. You are not able to come up with broad sweeping executive orders that are effectively lawmaking exercises. You also should not be issuing broad sweeping regulations that are not voted on by Congress. That's why I authored the REINS Act. That's why we were able to pass it out of the U.S. House of Representatives so that the EPA and other alphabet soup agencies won't control your life. And that's why we need conservative leadership, people who can get things done, conservative things in Washington, D.C., Mr. President.
Wow, you beat the time. Well done. Senator Holcomb,
Yeah,
same question. Do you want me to repeat it for you?
I think I got it after twice. I would first inform the president, probably every time I expose him, that he's been exposed. We know that this is all about his legacy from here on out. It didn't take us 7 years to figure it out. If you think that he's been active on executive orders to date, just wait for his last year. He is going to get while the getting's good and while he's there. And he has a whole different idea about where he wants to take this country. He told us at the outset, he said, we're 5 days away in Grant Park in Chicago from fundamentally transforming America. And every executive order to date has been setting that vision of America in his mind up. So I would be a bulldog each and every time, understanding that part of the answer is the power of the purse. And the other part of that, that's kind of like the left hand, and the right hand is the power of the people. We cannot afford to make a second mistake and elect Hillary Clinton or another Democrat. It may not be Hillary, it may be Byrne, but we can't afford that.
Thank you very much. All right, hopefully our next video will start up. It's going to be a clip featuring the beloved Hillary talking about Planned Parenthood.
And I think it is unfortunate that Planned Parenthood has been the object of such a concerted attack for so many years.
Bless her heart. Senator Young, you're going to be first with this question, please. What would you say to Hillary is the threshold for Congress to not only stop funding, but to declare illegal the murder of babies and the selling of their body parts?
I'd say Mrs. Clinton, as a father of 4 young children, as someone who respects life, as someone who's proud to have been endorsed by Indiana Right to Life, I find absolutely abhorrent the practice of abortion. I find equally abhorrent forcing good Americans, Christians, to subsidize this abhorrent practice. It is illegal. The Supreme Court came up with, through an exercise of raw judicial power, the Roe versus Wade decision that overturned most state statutes. It is immoral. We should be respecting life at the beginning of life, which is conception. And I will fight you every way, Senator Clinton, should I earn the trust and support of Hoosiers and they send me to the United States Senate.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Beat the time again. Love it. All right, Senator Holcomb, would you like me to repeat the question?
Just took once. I think I would ask her directly what gives her the right to take innocent life. For me, I value the sanctity of life for 3 main reasons. One, obviously it's my faith, and maybe her faith allows her to take innocent life. Mine does not. I think science is pretty clear today and come a long way on what life is. So that question in my mind has been answered. Maybe she has a different idea how to interpret science. And then I would ask her if she would review our founding documents where we're guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And does she just feel that these are just a series of inconvenient truths because the life is not, and I'm offended by it?
Thank you very much. Senator Stutzman, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's fine. You know, I would say to Mrs. Clinton, again, that taking taxpayer dollars to fund an evil organization like Planned Parenthood should not be a political issue. I mean, look again at the Constitution, that we are guaranteed. The Declaration of Independence is to guarantee life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life is a gift from God. And I can tell you, as a survivor of abortion, I was born in 1976. And my mother found herself to be pregnant when she was 17 years old. And knowing that at that time she could have legally gone and gotten an abortion, we were told by our government that we're no longer going to protect life in the most vulnerable position, at the most vulnerable time in a human being's life, and that's in the womb. And it's a sad state of affairs that we are fighting this issue in Washington, D.C. today, where we are giving $500 million to an organization that is not only just performing abortions, but now selling baby body parts because of the videos that we've now seen. And this has got to stop. And so help me, it stops on our watch.
Thank you much. Our next video clip is going to feature the Baron. This video clip is going to feature him, and he's got some special words for us.
This is my town hall meeting, and I set the rules, and I've had these rules.
Senator Holcomb, you're first up here, and the question's going to be, what do you say to the Baron about his prohibition against video or audio taping of public events by citizens? And do you believe that Americans who disagree with you are political terrorists, the way he described all of us in the Obamacare debate?
Well, I would say gladly and confidently that he's obviously wrong. This country belongs to us. He is not entitled to that office, and that's why he was ushered out of it. And he will find the same reception this go around as well. He is a person who, again, as President Obama and Mrs. Clinton, has been exposed through his voting record. And so that's why he doesn't want the public engaged. And that's why he doesn't want to welcome a dissenting opinion. And that's why he seeks to demonize and label folks who may not agree with him. So I look forward to going toe-to-toe with him and just putting him in his place.
Thank you very much. Senator Stutzman?
Well, I would say the same, that, sorry, Mr. Hill, that this is not your town hall meeting. We live in a democracy. And if anything, listen to the people. And I think that's one of the most important things that a member that is elected to any office can do, is to listen to our constituencies. Because first of all, I know that I don't know everything. And second of all, I find that there's great wisdom in listening to us as collective members of a community, of a state. And that's where the best answers are going to be found. And an ego as large as that just continues to show that it's bad leadership. And it's unfortunate, but that's what we see in the left. That's what we see in the Democrat Party. We don't want a discussion. We don't want a dialogue. They want us to sit here and be quiet and let them rule out of Washington, D.C. That's what our president has done, tried to do for the past 8 years, whether it's through executive orders or through working around Congress. If there's ever been, this president has lawyered his way around Congress in more ways because he does not want to work with Congress. And unfortunately, they'd rather tell us how to live our lives rather than listen.
Senator Young, would you like me to repeat any of the questions?
No, thank you. Thank you. I've thought quite a bit about this one, going back to 2010. I agree. It is bad leadership. It's not the sort of leadership I learned in the U.S. Marine Corps. Leaders, first and foremost, listen. And we don't have rulers in this country. We escaped that generations ago. We have representatives. And so as your United States Senator, I know we can do a whole lot better than Baron Hill. We got to make sure we beat Baron Hill. He survived, you'll recall, for the better part of a decade in this congressional district, not representing people, but instead speaking to people, saying one thing back here home and doing another thing in Washington, D.C., voting for Obamacare, for cap and trade, for the failed stimulus package. The list goes on and on. We can do better. And I hope to earn your trust and support and have a chance to go up against Barron again. Thank you.
Our next video clip is going to feature an Indiana Senator, Joe Donnelly, and this is regarding his Iran deal.
Well, what this does is it ensures that Iran can never get a nuclear weapon. In addition, it makes our nation safer, and it makes Israel safer as well. And so overall, what this does is it...
That's just not true.
All right, well, all right, well, so here's the question. Senator Stutzman, what do you say to Senator Donnelly, who capitulated to a president who negotiated a treaty with a terrorist state without calling it a treaty and giving them $150 million Oh, excuse me, billion, excuse me. Hard to believe that's that big. And also, what strategies would you have used to stop the travesty?
Sorry, I just couldn't contain myself. That's kind of like Joe Wilson sitting on the floor of the House during the State of the Union when he hollers out, "You lie," to the president. Remember that? You know, Senator Donnelly is just flat wrong. It does allow for Iran to get a nuclear bomb in 15 years. They believe that they're slowing the process down. I was talking to a Democrat on the House floor, and I told him, I said, "What am I missing here? Tell me I'm wrong, but what am I missing here that you all think this is such a good deal?" Because it's not. It is a bad deal for our country. And he said, "We know that the Iranians want a bomb, but what this does is it delays it for 15 years. So what difference does it make?" I'm saying, what difference does it make? Because maybe I don't have to deal with a nuclear Iran today, which I do believe we still will be dealing with a nuclear Iran because they are not going to abide by this agreement. And I said, but maybe we don't have to deal with it today, but what about my son Preston, who's almost 10 years old? In 15 years, he's going to be 25 years old, and he's going to have to be dealing with a nuclear Iran. So that's flat out not true.
Senator Young, would you like me to repeat any of that question for you?
No, thank you. One of the things I learned in the Marines is that it's very important to define the problem. It's also very important to come up with a solution to the problem. And so post-deal, it's clear that, as my friend said, this deal does put Iran within 10, 15 years, depending on how you count it, on the threshold of developing a nuclear weapon. But post-deal, they fired rockets near our naval vessels. They've taken captive 10 of our sailors and arguably violated the Geneva Conventions in terms of propaganda use. They have deployed more resources to Hezbollah, a terrorist organization. They have fired intercontinental ballistic missiles violating international law. So I have proposed as a solution, and I'm earning the support of prominent professionals in this regard. Let's have a select committee to strictly enforce every stricture against Iran developing a nuclear weapon or a delivery device, and we're getting increasing support for that.
Thank you very much. Senator Holcomb, do you need any of the question remarked? Repeated.
I would say to him, I may have been born on Tuesday, but not last Tuesday, and he doesn't believe what he's saying. That sounds like it's ripped right out of a DCCC binder and told to say this and repeat it often. That's very shallow of him to try that on the American public. But look, Iran, ISIS is one threat, and it's immediate, clear and present danger. Iran is a somewhat longer threat, but threat that we cannot ignore. Obviously, they're taking that $150 billion and they're going to be sprinkling it around in Syria and Yemen and Iraq and Lebanon, surrounding Israel, as you suggested in your question. So no, this does not. This strengthens an empire that seeks to dominate not just the Middle East, but around the world, and that's why they are flexing. That's why they're becoming more and more aggressive. That's why they're taunting America, which is a shame.
Thank you. Well, the good news is I haven't had to repeat these questions, so we get to do more questions. So we're going to move on to question number 5, and we get to address Obama again, and this is regarding the war on terror.
Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these countries are tiny compared to the Soviet Union. They don't pose a serious threat to us.
Not the way the Soviet Union posed a threat to us. And the question first will go to Senator Holcomb. Please contrast with Obama. What is your view of the war on terror? Who are our enemies? And what are our mission objectives?
Well, the first thing we have to do is rebuild our military to a peace through strength position and posture, because as it is now, we're conducting a war on terrorism that fits nicely in the narrative of this president, and that is one that seeks a new world order that flattens out the power bases. And in terms of threats, they're coming from all different directions, unlike I think we've ever seen before. 8th century threats, 19th century threats, 21st century threats all mixed up together, using 21st century technology coming to our shores. So we're dealing with people who are ISIS, etc., Iran, Russia, a competitor of ours, and China, another competitor of ours. So they're coming from all different directions, and we have to be very clear-eyed about this, but make the investment. And that's why when we draw down our military, others will fill that void and that vacuum. And we're doing all we can right now because the president has put us in a position through sequester where we've taken out $1 trillion over a 10-year period and told the world that we're withdrawing.
Thank you, sir. Senator Stutzman.
I think the best thing we could do to fix the problems in the Middle East is to elect a new commander-in-chief, because this president has not served our country well when it comes to the safety and the security of the United States of America. Our allies are wondering, can they stand? Are we going to have their back? Are we going to stand with them? Benjamin Netanyahu comes to the United States and has declined an invitation to the White House. I believe one of the great leaders that we have today in this world is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And if you listen to him, he understands the threat that is against Israel from Iran. They have been much more hands-off when it comes to the situation with ISIS. But what I think that has, moving forward, even though we know that the president wanted to get our troops out of Iraq, which created a huge vacuum and allowed this problem to become as large as it is today, we're going to have to decide how are we going to participate in Syria and Iraq. Are we going to take a hands-off approach, or are we going to lead? And I believe that this is the time when we have to make the Muslim countries in that part of the world decide, are they against terrorist activity and terrorism, or are they going to continue to fund it and stand to the side? We need to force them to take a position and help lead this fight.
Thank you very much. Senator Young, do you need any of that repeated?
Thank you, Lisa. As I said earlier, one of the things I learned in the military is the importance of staying engaged in the world. The United States is the only one who can help stabilize some of these regions. Of course, working with our allies, our European allies where possible. If we were to stay, ironically, more engaged in the Middle East, then we would create the self-confidence of the Sunni Arab tribes where they would engage, and they could help us fight ISIS as they came up, the Sunni awakening during the Iraq War. So peace through strength. Only strong nations can consistently form alliances. Only strong nations can consistently deter aggression. And only strong nations can win wars and keep the American people safe and secure. So that will be my lodestar. There is no more fundamental responsibility for a United States Senator than to keep the American people safe and secure.
Thank you very much. Our next video clip is going to stay with Obama, and he's going to be talking about what he thinks about the Constitution.
That generally the Constitution is a charter of negative liberties, says what the states can't do to you, says what the federal government can't do to you, but it doesn't say what the federal government or the state government must do on your behalf.
All right, we're going to start with Senator Stutzman, and here's the question. Do you agree with Obama's assessment, or what do you believe the Constitution means to you and to all of us?
No, I don't agree with the president's assessment. And again, I think that that's why we find ourselves in the situation we are today with $18 trillion of debt, and that debt is climbing. We see that our country is not the strong leader in the world today like it should be. When we swear an oath, we don't swear an oath to a military leader, we don't swear an oath to a dictator. We swear an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And as we know that they are enumerated powers given to the federal government. The states created the federal government didn't create the states. And that's why I believe if we would follow the Constitution and the guidelines that Article 1, Section 8 has given to the federal government, the Bill of Rights, knowing that what is not given to the federal government belongs to the states. The Department of Education, I believe, is not a constitutional role for the federal government. It is a responsibility of the states. Healthcare is a responsibility of the states. It is not a federal government role. And so I would firmly disagree with the president of his assessment of the Constitution. And for a so-called professor of the Constitution, he has not served our country well by following what I believe is to be one of the greatest founding documents that this world has ever seen, in governing.
Thank you very much. Senator Young, do you need me to repeat any of that?
No, thank you. So the drafter of our Constitution, James Madison, said the powers of our federal government were few and defined. We know that our Constitution lays it all out. That's the guiding document that we all swear to uphold. And our rights are protected through the Bill of Rights. But we also know that there are itemized responsibilities of government. Article 1, Section 8 itemizes the responsibility, in particular, of Congress. Why would have our founders itemized the responsibility of our federal government if instead this were somehow a living Constitution? We don't have a living Constitution. It is up to we, the people, to amend the Constitution if we believe it requires amending, and the process to do so is laid out therein. So there is no more fundamental thing than for candidates for the United States Senate to understand our fundamental law. I pledge to you all to uphold that fundamental law should I earn your trust and support. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Senator Holcomb?
I think his rhetoric just cheapens the value of an Ivy League degree, and he just proved it. He has a whole different impression of what the Constitution is. I don't think he's read it. I'd like to sit down and read it with him word for word, because he's walking away with with a different interpretation by design, because he has a different outlook for the future of this country and a different vision. And pick the amendment. Our Constitution guarantees us certain liberties and our freedoms, period. And he has twisted it and turned it on its head and said that in his mind, the federal government knows best. And he's trying to use the Constitution in some warped way as a weapon to divide people. And we see that day in and day out. So I would look forward to challenging him line by line on every word of the Constitution, because he's, again, getting it wrong.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue with Obama.
Well, this is not a stimulus bill, this is a spending bill. What do you think a stimulus is? That's the whole point.
The question is, we'll start with Senator Young. What is your line in the sand? Do you believe that we can spend our way out of the massive federal deficits and the debt that President Obama's administration has caused? And what are you prepared to do to actually reduce our debt?
The debt is a long-term problem. It's not just a fiscal issue, it's also a moral issue, and it's incumbent upon candidates for public office to come up with specific solutions to deal with it. I intend to be part of the solution. Enjoyed working in the House with Paul Ryan on a budget that honestly balanced, cut $5 trillion of spending, cut our deficit in half. There's further work to do. Barron Hill voted for that stimulus package. Barron Hill has an entirely different vision, and so does Hillary Clinton. So it's essential that we not only cut waste, fraud, and abuse, that we not only make sustainable programs like Medicare and Social Security, but it's also important that we grow the size of the economy from 2% rate of growth to 4% rate of growth, so that more businesses are started, so that more people's wages are rising. That will bring more money into the Treasury. This is the way to help balance the budget. A combination of hard decisions and cuts where required, but also growth through passing things like the REINS Act, the Regulatory Reform Bill, simplifying our tax code, and so forth. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Senator Holcomb, do you need me to repeat any of it?
No, I would say that again, the president was exposed. The stimulus program was in large part about passing out goodies to his donors. And once the public caught on to that, and these companies went bankrupt because they had no sound business plan, once the public caught on, he backed down. But we're going to have to do more than catch on to his ways, because again, he's got another year, but we've got which has been said already, $18.7 trillion debt. We're going to add we're on path to add another trillion every year from here on out. And deficit spending is coming back, and we're going to look at $6 trillion added on in deficit spending. And so this is moral. what we're taking from our children today and asking them to pay for. And if we don't address it by cutting spending and increasing growth, this country will continue to decline on the world stage and here at home on Main Street. So we've got to make those bold decisions that are going to be relevant to those bold problems, just like we did here in Indiana, if we're going to dig our way out of this hole.
Thank you, sir. Senator Stutzman?
Well, I again would disagree with the president that spending your way out of a hole is not a good idea. You know, this is where I got crossways with our own Republican leadership in the House. It was John Boehner who went down to the White House and cut a deal with President Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi, what was called the Budget Control Act. And what we were told was that we're going to form a super committee that's going to fix all of the spending problems and make reforms to our government to fix the problems that we deal with. And we were told that the sequester would never take place. The sequester primarily hit the military in spending, military spending, rather than touching and cutting all of the other parts of the federal government's budget. And we were told that'll never happen. The super committee would find a solution. The sequester wouldn't hit the military. Well, guess what? The super committee didn't find solutions, and the sequester kicked in and has cut our military dramatically. And now that's where I started to say we don't have the right type of leadership, even in our own conference with Speaker John Boehner. I was then told that we were going to cut a deal with, we couldn't get a deal cut with the Democrats in the Senate, that we were going to do a short-term extension, and that was not the case. Again, we cut a deal with the Democrats. We have got to control spending, and it's got to start with our leadership in our own party.
Thank you very much. All right, question 8 is going to be a video clip of Obama, and this is I'm glad we were able to get to this. This is talking about energy, and I know everyone in our community is affected by this.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad.
Everybody in our community is affected by what happens at IKE with this. People's, the economy is affected by the cost of electricity. Our businesses are affected. Everybody is. We're going to start with Senator Holcomb. What are your solutions to the energy crisis?
Well, it's not to do what he and his running mate, the president and his running mate, Joe Biden, said at the very outset as well. They said they're going to try to bankrupt coal companies. Obviously, this is hugely important to the state of Indiana, but we shouldn't be surprised. The president is very transparent about his beliefs and his ideology, and again, I would say that this is another attempt through his climate change rhetoric to appeal to this new world order, to the lowest denominator, and to try to flatten us and bring us down to other global standards, which, by the way, are not going to play by the rules. I mean, again, China, probably, it's been said that our relationship with Europe in great part defined the last century, and our relationship with Asia will define this century. Probably true. And yet we're competing on this energy front with folks who aren't being upfront and honest with us. And we learn that every day. So we have to have an all-of-above approach, energy portfolio. I like staying cool in the winter and warm, or cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And for that to be the case, we've got to have an all-above approach. This president wants to continue his war on coal, and that's something I just won't stand by.
Well, I would agree with Eric on an all-of-above approach on our energy, but I'd like to go back to the budget just briefly, because again, this is where, do we have the leadership that's willing to fight the president or Harry Reid or Nancy Pelosi in Washington, D.C.? Because if we don't, both parties are taking this country down the wrong path. I offered the conservative budget this last year. I'm going to be offering it again in February. But the conservative budget fixed the sequester problem, moved military defense spending to the highest level of all the budgets proposed, and cut the EPA, cut all of these agencies that the president wants to grow, rather than growing them. And unfortunately, as John Boehner was leaving, cut a deal with the Democrats again that only increased spending, blew through the caps. And so that's why I was one of only 25 to vote against John Boehner this past beginning of Congress because I felt we needed new leadership. We can't just go along with our own party leadership every time when it takes the country down the wrong path. And I think that's what we need in Congress, is people who are willing to fight whatever problem and whoever may be part of the problem in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much. Senator Young?
You know, the president's comment was so hypocritical. On one hand, he'll say that he and his Democratic Party stands up for those on fixed incomes. He'll say that they stand up for the working man and working woman who work in the manufacturing sector. They'll say that they care for the person who's really struggling to make it. But cap and trade, which your former congressman voted for, incidentally, would adversely impact Indiana as much as any state in the country. On a per-person basis, at least according to recent year numbers, we're within the top few states in the country in terms of our manufacturing economy and our dependence on a vibrant manufacturing sector. Why do you think that is? Well, we have affordable electric rates. And it sure would be nice if we continued to have affordable electric rates, but this bill also goes by the name of Waxman Markey. Henry Waxman is from Beverly Hills. Markey from Harvard Yard, the Boston area. So this benefits the coast at the expense of the Midwest, manufacturing country. And so this is bad for America generally, but bad for Indiana in particular. I'll fight for Hoosiers. I'll fight for good tax policy, good regulatory policy. I've done so over the last few years by offering my own solutions and getting those passed, and we'll do so if I earn your trust and support in the Senate.
Thank you. I think we're going to squeeze in the one last question here on Obama regarding immigration.
We're going to offer the following deal. If you've been in America for more than 5 years, if you have children who are American citizens or legal residents, if you register, pass a criminal background check, and you're willing to pay your fair share of taxes, you'll be able to apply to stay in this country temporarily.
All right, Senator Stutzman, we're going to start out with you. What would you describe to Obama as your solutions for immigration reform, which does not sacrifice our sovereignty or give amnesty?
Well, first of all, I think we have laws on the books that already need to be, that need to be followed now. We have to start with the border. If the border is not sealed, if we do not control the border, we have no idea who's going to come in and who's going to go out of the country. And I believe that whether it takes a wall, build a wall. If it takes more border security, put more border security on it. Whatever it takes, let's control the border. I mean, we are the greatest country in the world. We're the most powerful military in the world. And if we can't control our own borders, what does that tell us about the leadership of this country? And so I think it's very simple. We start with the border, and then, the president wants to give amnesty to those who are here illegally. I don't believe that's an appropriate thing at all to do. Unfortunately, our federal government has failed us, and it's failed those who are here illegally because we should have controlled the border to begin with. So we need to start with the border, and then I don't believe we should be giving citizenship to those who are here in this country illegally.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rick. Senator Young.
One of my responsibilities as a Marine Corps intelligence officer, I worked with a unit that flew around drones at a time when few had ever heard of unmanned aerial vehicles or drones. And Marines have this unique mission. It's whatever else the President of the United States directs. And back then, the President directed us to train on the southern border of the United States, working with other three-letter agencies to ensure that we had doctrine for securing the border. That border can be secured through proper use and proper investments in unmanned aerial vehicles, in fencing where required, and boots on the ground where required. So that, of course, is the first responsibility. And frankly, if we're going to move to a position where we can have a skill-based as opposed to a chain-based immigration system, one's great-great-great-uncle coming in just because you happen to get into the country, as opposed to what skills does the U.S. economy need? If we're going to end up in that spot, we're first going to have to make sure Americans feel safe and secure so we can move on to other aspects of immigration reform. My time's done. Thanks.
Thank you much. Senator Holcomb.
Yeah, I would say that response to me, and especially seeing him say that on video, is exactly why the American electorate is so cynical right now. and carries the mood that we do. This president said that he could not do through executive order what he then did. He told the public that I can't do it. I need to work through Congress. And then when he found out that Congress rejected his plan, that's when he said, now I'm going to try to ram this through. And thankfully, the courts so far have stiff-armed him and said, no, this goes to the people. So we are going to have to absolutely secure our border. That's true. Enough is enough. We need to get to that. We need to improve and upgrade our communication systems so that we can track where people are and when they are there. And you should never be able to achieve a legal status from an illegal position. So we've got a lot of work to do and have been talking about it way too long.
I'd like to thank you all for being up here. And it's time for the 3-minute closing comments. Senator Young, first up.
I'm a Marine. I want to kick down doors where they're not open, the U.S. Senate. Many of you know that I live in Bloomington, Indiana, sometimes affectionately called the People's Republic of Bloomington. My wife and I, we call it missionary work living there, all right? And we've earned a few converts over the years. But back in 2010, I decided to serve in a different way with all of you in a team effort. You see, we had this Congressman, Barron Hill, who would say one thing back home, do another thing in Washington. And I don't have a big ego, but I had enough of an ego to think I could make a difference. And so I stepped forward with no political background. And I ran against Barron Hill. And everywhere I went, I would share basically 3 things with everyone. The first thing I would tell people is I know Barron, he's been able to survive in this marginal district for the better part of a decade, but I can beat Barron Hill. But don't vote for me just because you think I can win this election, because an election victory not tied to higher principles is really an empty victory. Vote for me because you think I'm a strong conservative leader, because you think I can advance conservative principles, because you think I can kick down some doors in Washington, D.C. And then finally, I remind people I understand that elections, in the end, they're not about the person holding the microphone or in front of the camera. Instead, elections are about you. They're about people like you around this state and around this country. They're about your children, your grandchildren. They're about the unborn. We, of course, won that election, a very important election. It felt good here in southeastern Indiana, I know, but we won control of the House of Representatives. And you know what? I've been frustrated. I've been frustrated that we haven't gotten more conservative things done. That's really what all of you ought to be demanding, is results. Not just defining the problem here, but conservative leadership, conservative results. And so I'm running on my record of getting conservative results, whether it's working with Mitch Daniels on a way to finance higher ed without any taxpayer backing, or the REINS Act, embraced by every conservative presidential candidate in the country to keep Obama's regulations and the next president's regulations under control of we the people as opposed to unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. Or whether it's been my work to reform welfare so that we make sure that work always pays more than joblessness. These are real results, and that's what I'm running on. And I promise I will fight every day. I will fight every day on behalf of each of you. I will listen. I will never stop listening. I'll continue to circulate around this great state so that we can make Washington, D.C. more like Indiana. God bless you. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Senator Holcomb.
I was once shared some pretty good advice by a pretty smart guy that said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And when I first announced that I was running for the United States Senate, I set some rules out for myself and how we would conduct the campaign. And I said that I wanted to be the most locally rooted United States Senator that the state has ever had. And that is a tall order. I get it. We've had some great ones, still do, in our senior senator. But I was just adamant that we would spend every day doing a couple things. One was building a locally rooted and grounded team all over the state. And so I'm proud to have Jamie Knoll, who's the 9th District Chairman, Republican Chairman, as a co-chair. I'm proud to have Blair Milo, the mayor of LaPorte. These are two, as the other co-chair, these are two executives that know how to get things done, a sheriff and a mayor. Very reflective of how we're going to run this campaign. I'm proud to have a guy named Kyle Hupfer from Madison County as my treasurer, the 5th District Republican chair. That's who I am surrounding myself with. Last week we announced that Don Vilwalk, the immediate past president of Indiana Farm Bureau, signed on board and is helping. The past Indiana State Fire Marshal Roger Johnson signed on board last week. These are the kind of folks that I'm trying to attract so that I can continue to be that locally rooted United States Senator, so that I can best reflect and represent the Indiana experience, that Indiana way in Washington, D.C., and defend our values in Washington, D.C. So I'll continue to travel. Last year we went to not just all 92 counties, living out that charge that I set forth on day one. We put 25,000 miles on the odometer. The Earth's circumference is, by the way, 24,901, so I feel like we literally drove around the world. But we're going to do it again and again and again. And as a senator, my wife and I, Janet, live on the northwest side of Indianapolis in a little place called Traders Point. I will make it a practice to fly into Fort Wayne and work my way back home, or fly into Evansville and work my way back home, because I just think this is critically important, that you not just know the people that are really propelling our communities at that ground level, at that local level, but that you know the issues and when they change, and then how we solve them. That is the most important thing, and that's what's instructing me, that Indiana experience when we turned the state of Indiana around and got it steaming in the right direction. We can do this, but it's going to take a United States Senator and we the people to do it. Thank you very much.
Senator Stutzman.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor to be here and have enjoyed the conversation, and know that just like you all, we're all concerned about the direction of our country, and that this next election is critical, because the next president of the United States could be nominating 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 Supreme Court justices. And as I said earlier, we're seeing a very powerful Supreme Court that is now making laws in our country. And I believe that we need to confirm constitutional judges that we're going to respect the Constitution and follow the plan that was laid out by our founding forefathers. I would also say that I'm going to continue to work on the debt. The $18 trillion of debt is what I believe to be the greatest threat to our country. Every generation of Americans has faced tremendous challenges and threats, most of them outside threats. But this threat, I believe, is an internal threat, and one that we're going to have to deal with as Americans. And finally, I believe that we have a broken federal government. Washington, D.C. is broken. It's worse than what I thought. I serve on the Budget Committee, and as they started to explain the budgetary process, I just had to pick up my jaw off the floor, because I couldn't believe that we're letting a process go on so long that is only sinking our country further and further into debt. You know, it's great to go to Washington and work hard to pass legislation. I've worked in the VA committee. I worked on the Farm Bill, trying to separate the Farm Bill for keeping ag policy in its lane and food stamp policy in its lane. The food stamp program has taken over the Farm Bill. About 80% of the Farm Bill goes to food stamps, using the farmer's good name to pass a bill. And I think that we have a broken system in Washington that needs to be fixed. Washington's also a boom town. If you go to Washington right now, there's cranes everywhere. The town is booming. And why is that? It's because our tax dollars are funding our federal capital at rates that we haven't seen ever in this country. Debt continues to climb. Printing money continues to go on at a rapid pace. We see the Federal Reserve and its actions on quantitative easing and on our monetary policy. Our federal government is failing us as the American people. And I believe that it's going to take more than just getting a bill passed. It's going to take breaking the system that works that's in Washington, D.C., and reforming the system in Washington, D.C., and moving that power back to the states, moving that power back to the citizens, empowering people. If the federal government is more powerful, what does that mean? It means that we as Americans have less power. And today, Washington is more powerful than what we've ever seen in this country before. And I believe that it's going to take all of us in this room, in our state, where we have seen good leadership. I served in the Indiana legislature when Mitch Daniels was governor, and I saw what leadership looked like. And it's encouraging to know that we can do it again. And with your trust and with your vote, I'll be happy to fight for those freedoms and liberties for this country. Thank you. God bless.
A round of applause for these fine candidates. And look, we're going to have this on WKM News. Some of you know about it, some of you don't. It's an alternative news source here in Jefferson County.